coercion. If you ever hear a sermon from myself or anyone where you feel like you're being coerced or you're being manipulated into believing something or accepting something or behaving a certain way, that's not the way of God. It's not the way that he draws people to himself. He draws people to himself with love and grace, patience, forgiveness. Yes, with justice, but his justice is so much greater and better and wiser than human justice and the way we would like to see justice play out. So often we attribute our own desires to God. We make God in our own image, and we say God is just, and so justice means whatever you think it should mean. But God is much more than we can imagine and understand, and so we need to be humble in how we approach him. God gives every opportunity for people to turn to him, and so he is patient. He is very patient. He's patient with the people we don't want him to be patient with. He's patient with us. He's been patient with the Israelites, but they haven't been able to break free from the ways of the world around them. And so we see this story in Judges chapter 17. And I'm going to read the chapter. It's not a very long chapter. But this is a story in chapter 17 that it's an illustration of what is happening in Israel. And again, this isn't likely at the end of the story. This is likely closer to the beginning of them entering the promised land. But the way it's placed in Judges is to build the progression to show where things are heading before the kings come into play. Now, a man named Micah from the hill country of Ephraim said to his mother, the 1,100 shekels of silver, just to give you an idea, so 10 to 20 shekels a year is sort of a salary. 1,100 shekels? It's a lifetime of wages. The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and about which I heard you utter a curse, I have that silver with me. I took it. Then his mother said, the Lord bless you, my son. Is that what you say to your kid when he steals something from you? God bless you. Oh. When he returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother, she said, I solemnly consecrate my silver to the Lord, to Yahweh. So she's speaking directly about the God of Israel, not some other God, but Yahweh, the God of Israel. I solemnly consecrate my silver to Yahweh for my son, to make an image overlaid with silver. So close. I will give it back to you. So after he returned the silver to his mother, she took 200 shekels of the silver and gave them to a silversmith, who used them to make the idol, and it was put in Micah's house. Now this man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and some household gods, and installed one of his sons as priest. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. A young Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, who had been living within the clan of Judah, left that town in search of some other place to stay. On his way, he came to Micah's house in the hill country of Ephraim. Micah asked him, where are you from? I'm a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, he said, and I'm looking for a place to stay. Then Micah said to him, live with me and be my father and priest, and I'll give you 10 shekels of silver a year, your clothes and your food. So the Levite agreed to live with him, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. Then Micah installed the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in his house. And Micah said, now I know that Yahweh will be good to me, since this Levite has become my priest. Okay. I read that story probably 10 times before it started to click what was really going on here. So if this is like kind of obscure and you're like, yeah, what even does this mean? It sounds, you're scratching your head, like what's going on here? You're in good company. If you already fully understand it, maybe you should come and preach the message, because I'm still not quite there. There's stuff going on that's hard to understand because it's so far removed from our reality. Nothing that they're doing here happens in our lives. Like, there's nothing. But there are some ways to think about it that maybe you'll be able to place yourself in this story and see how it connects. So this story is representative of the religious situation in Israel. And it's a story really about how how they are treating their God, how they are treating Yahweh. They have lost their way. Israel has lost its way, and they've descended into basically religious chaos, like anything goes. Everyone's just doing whatever they think is best. In this case, a man and his mother put together a shrine that is apparently in honor of Yahweh. Okay, so they have good intentions. They want to honor Yahweh, but they are going about it all wrong. This is not how Yahweh told his people to worship him. And we know that because, have you read the first 5 books of the Bible? There's a lot of detail in there, more detail than we care to read sometimes. And so it's not like they lack the information or the instruction. It's that information and instruction has become kind of back here, tucked away, and not front of mind. So Micah returns this silver, probably a dowry. Often a dowry would be given just in case something happens to the husband. He dies, or maybe he has to go off to war, or something happens, and she's left alone. Well, at least she has some money to live off of, and this is a lifetime's worth of money. And so she's got this money, and she has devoted it to the Lord. The meaning of the curse is sort of a weird way to say it, but she basically put a magical kind of covering over this money, so then if it would be used improperly, then the person who would use it improperly would be cursed. That's kind of the thinking behind that. And so Micah took this money, but he was afraid. This isn't about repentance. He's not feeling bad that he took the money. He's just thinking, this money is devoted to God. She's put this sort of covering over it, and I don't want to have bad things happen to me. So it's like blood money, this is cursed money. And so I'm going to give it back. And then his mother is also probably motivated by fear. Oh, I don't want something bad to happen to my son, because, we know what happened with Achan when he took devoted things from Jericho, and that were supposed to be devoted to the Lord, and then he and his family and his whole household and everyone was killed, and Israel suffered loss because of his disobedience and using devoted things wrongly. And so there's this mentality, and it was a common mentality, that if you use devoted things wrongly, then you're going to be punished. And his mother didn't want that to happen, so she calls upon God and say, bless him. Don't destroy him, bless him. That's sort of what's sort of going on there when you start to understand the whole thing. And you can get all this information by reading the Bible. This isn't stuff that I've studied outside of the Bible. You read the Bible and you start to gain this information by really knowing it well. And so when they decided that she didn't want him to be cursed and he didn't want to be cursed, then they set up a shrine. It's like, okay, well, let's use some of this. Let's use this money. It was all devoted to the Lord, but take 200 of it and let's set up a shrine. That would get you a pretty good looking shrine. This thing would look really nice. Cadillac of shrines. Shined up, beautiful. But this was a serious problem. It says that Micah made an ephod So that's like a vest, usually used by priests. And he made some household gods. And in the Hebrew, it lists off 4 gods. It doesn't really matter, but it's like basically saying he did everything that God said not to do. Like that's what it's hinting at. He did, like none of this is right. And then he made one of his sons the priest of his shrine. So not a proper priest. Should be, priests should come from the Levites. And you don't just choose a priest and think that that's going to work. Like there's some magical kind of system there. So basically in 5 verses, the entire system of worship that God gave to the Israelites is rejected. None of this is good. None of this is according to God's plan. It's not what he told the Israelites to do when they got to the promised land. And so why? Why has this gone wrong? What's happening here? And it says in verse 6, why? That little verse, that little statement, tucked away, sort of almost by the way kind of statement. It says, in those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. And if you continue to read to the end of Judges, you'll see it says, 18 verse 1, in those days Israel had no king. So just a reminder. 19 verse 1, in those days Israel had no king. Why does it say that? And then at the end, the last verse in the book, the last statement is, in those days Israel had no king. And again it says, like in 17 verse 6, everyone did as they saw fit. So the writer of Judges is saying, look, everything's going wrong, and it's because Israel had no king. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. They were not ruled. They were ruling themselves. This is the problem. These statements tell why things have gone wrong. They have no king. And so they revert to the old ways. The old ways and the ways of the other nations is that of, well, if things are going badly, then you try to appease the gods. And so if things are going badly, in this case, a curse might come upon this family, and so then, okay, we got to appease Yahweh. That's not the way he works, though. He's not like the other gods, which are just shadows. They're not even real things. They're just shadows of the true power of Yahweh. But the way that he works is that he decides who's blessed. He decides who receives, and he decides when things are taken away. And it is not based on our understanding, it's based on his wisdom. If you're here for the series on Job, I sort of beat that drum for like 17 weeks. God's justice system is not a system that he is subject to, as though it's some rule book that he has to follow, that we can understand. His justice system operates out of his wisdom. And he knows what is just. And often we're like, what just happened? How is this justice? We don't know. It's hard to know. And so Israel does what we all do. We try to make sense of it. We try to figure it out. And the way that is often done is you try to appease the gods, and if things start to go well for you, then keep doing what you're doing. Do we ever do that? Things are going well for me right now, so I better just not change anything. That is not the wisdom of God. We trust God whether things, sorry to say this, Rick, but yeah, God is good in those times when he provides in amazing ways and he reveals himself to us through these things. But he's also good when things aren't going so well. He would be equally good if they didn't come and you didn't get picked up and you didn't have things fixed. He would be equally good. But when things go well, it's like we show gratitude, and that's the right response. When things go well, we thank God for his provision, but we cannot jump to the conclusion that things went well because of anything we did. He decides. Often what we think we did right isn't actually what the right thing is. But we don't need to worry about all that. We trust God in the good and the bad, and we keep looking to him. But Israel didn't want to do this. They were treating their God poorly. They were treating each other poorly, and they do whatever is right in their own eyes. They've rejected the rule of God, and they've made themselves their own rulers, and they are doing it their own way. And so Micah, and the story of Micah, represents what happens when someone wants the benefits of divine favor, but wants to get those benefits using his own wisdom. And so then when a nomadic Levite, which wasn't uncommon, the Levites didn't actually have their own cities like the other tribes. The Levites would, their role was to be a priest for Yahweh, to represent him to the people and to intercede for them and essentially to bring them closer to God. But again, there was instructions for how to do this. And this Levite, he's like, those are just suggestions. Doesn't like our speed limit signs on Highway 22. Or what is this one? Highway 20. We used to live by Highway 22. I always get them mixed up. I'm convinced, like, maybe we should just make those 100-kilometer-an-hour signs yellow, because yellow means it's like, we recommend you go this speed around this corner kind of thing. The whole stretch should just be like yellow signs, because if I go 100, I get angry people behind me. And this often, if we don't like a law, then we treat it as though it's not really, it doesn't apply to me, because I understand the spirit of the law, and I can break the law without breaking the spirit of the law, and I'm still good. And that's kind of how things start to really crumble. This Levite, he's like, I get it. I get the spirit of the law because I've seen it all over. Like all the rest of the nations kind of do it a similar way. Similar, but not the same. God has very specific differences in how he wants his people to worship him. But because there's other priests around and they do it kind of a different way, it's like, yeah, that's all kind of the same thing. I'll just do it my way. And the Levite comes, and Micah sees an opportunity because he knows the Levites. Well, these are the ones chosen by God to represent him. So now God has brought me a Levite. And so now he's blessing me. Now I can have a proper priest in my household to help me worship God in the wrong way. And then in chapter 18, when Micah's home is raided by people from the tribe of Dan, who haven't yet established, this is how we know it's kind of earlier in the story. The tribe of Dan hasn't established themselves yet. They're still kind of trying to make, like I often am with directions, like I'll figure it out. I'll figure out where my home is. I'll get there eventually. I don't need directions. Yeah, they're kind of wandering around like, where do we go? Where do we live? And along their way, they come across Micah's house, and some spies go ahead of them, and they learn that this Micah guy, he's got a really nice shrine. God seems to have blessed him significantly. He even has a Levite. And so then they go and they raid his house and take all the things. And the priest, the Levite, it's like, we want this for ourselves. We want to be blessed. And they think that the blessing is because of all that stuff. And this is the beginning, this act of Dan, the tribe of Dan, taking this priest and the shrine and the whole system that really was established in this household. Isaac, you want to turn the fans on a little bit? Someone's having hot flash. I didn't say the name of the person. This is the beginning of the departure because in the northern tribes of Israel, later in the story, there's this idea of the priesthood of Dan. It's a whole different priestly system. It's a whole different worship system. I won't get into it, but that's coming down if you keep reading in the story, and we'll get there next summer. But the priesthood of Dan becomes a source of idolatry for the whole northern kingdom. And it kind of starts here. Micah, his mother, and establishing this fake center of worship. The story is a story that it's a warning for us and a reminder of the faithfulness of God. The warning is for us to look at this story and ask ourselves, how do we do this? How do I do this in my life? How am I like Micah, establishing my own way to worship God and to ask him for things and to treat him as though he's a vending machine for my blessings? How do I do that? But it's also a message of God's faithfulness, because he's not going to start over. You know that crooked house? It's crooked, and it needs to be set straight, but the foundation is good. The foundation's good. He built it. I'll talk about that here in a moment, but God built the foundation. And what he's going to do is prevent Israel from descending into complete darkness and chaos, because that's where it's headed. Without a king, they will destroy themselves. And so he's going to give them a king. He's going to give them what they think they really need. Well, it is what they really need. They do need a king, but they've rejected the king that they have, which is God. And so he will give them a human king. And the first human king will be Saul. And you know where Saul comes from? If you read the last 3 chapters in Judges, even if you have a Bible and you want to just flip over there, you can see that the whole thing sort of revolves around some problems in the tribe of Benjamin. And there's a certain series of events around the city of Gibeah, and tremendous judgment that comes to that place. I'm not going to get into it because it's not rated for a general audience. So it would be hard. Yeah, it would be hard to talk about it without it. I feel sorry for parents who have to go home and answer questions that their kids are asking because of what I've said. So, but I encourage you to read it. The tribe and the city that's condemned by all the rest of Israel, all the 11 tribes come, and they basically bring judgment upon Benjamin and Gibeah, the city. It's because they did terrible things, but that's where Saul comes from that place. And so it gives us an idea, like it's kind of a weird irony where God's like, yeah, you want a king? Well, he's going to come from that place you just destroyed, that you just condemned, the place that clearly did the most evil thing so far in Israel. He's going to come from there. You want a king, human king so bad? I'll tell you what a human king is going to do. He warns them through Samuel. But that's what they want. They want a human king. And if you choose to read these stories, I encourage you to do it. It's in the Bible for a reason. But the reason it's in the Bible is not because there's anything good there that we should imitate. There's nothing good in those stories. Just because it's in the Bible, it doesn't mean that it's the way things ought to be. They describe what happened, not what should happen. They're there for us to get a picture of what God is doing. It's a picture of people desperate for power and the misuse of that power. It's a picture of a nation behaving badly and the God of that nation behaving unexpectedly faithful. He continues to move forward with this plan with Israel. And you know, the deeper that I get into knowing God as he's actually revealed in the whole scriptures, like the whole story, the deeper that you get into there, the more you can see why C.S. Lewis wrote what he did in the Chronicles of Narnia. I have to say, probably my favorite, well, one of my favorite, there's some others. One of my favorites from the whole series is this little interaction. And you've probably heard me allude to this before, or maybe you're familiar with it. Susan, one of the human characters, says, "Who is Aslan?" Oh, who is Aslan? She's talking to a beaver. The animals talk in these stories, by the way. Mr. Beaver says, "Aslan? Why, don't you know? He's the king. It is he, not you, that will save Mr. Tumnus." Mr. Tumnus got himself into some trouble. Is he a man? Asked Lucy, Susan's sister. "Aslan a man?" said Mr. Beaver sternly. "Certainly not. I tell you, he is the king of the wood and the son of the great emperor beyond the sea. Don't you know who is the king of beasts? Aslan is a lion, the great lion." "Oh," said Susan, "I thought he was a man. Is he quite safe?" I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion." "That you will, dearie, and make no mistake," said Mrs. Beaver. "If there's anyone who can appear before Aslan without their knees knocking, they're either braver than most or just silly." "Then he isn't safe?" said Lucy. "Safe?" said Mr. Beaver. "Don't you hear what Mrs. Beaver tells you? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you." This is a dialogue about the fear of God. This is what the fear of God is. The Bible tells us over and over and over again to fear him. What does it mean to fear God? The fear of God is to respect both the untamability and the goodness of God. The fear of God is to never treat him as though we know what he's going to do, but also to always treat him as though what he is going to do is going to be good. There will be many kings in Israel's future and many kings in this world, but there has always been one king. He is the king that Israel and us have always needed, but never thought to ask for. It doesn't dawn on us to ask for the sort of king that God is. He's a king that rules not with violent oppression, not with conquest, but one whose victory comes when violence does its worst to him, even to the point of death. He is the sort of king that lets evil destroy him because he cannot stay dead. And I've said this before recently, and I'll say it again because it's a message that we increasingly need to hear in our world. Evil can do its worst to us. And we can welcome it because we have a king who raises the dead. And when evil has done its worst to us, it has nothing left to do. And we are left victorious. Victorious not because we've defeated them, but because they've exhausted themselves in trying to destroy us. And we haven't exhausted ourselves because we don't need to. The victory is ours. And we know it when we've passed through death. See, the weapon of this God is forgiveness, and his vindication is resurrection. We're going to look at that in the book of Acts. The reason the church grew and the reason the church was validated is because Jesus actually resurrected from the dead. If he never did that, it would have just disappeared like all the other false messiahs. But he actually was risen from the dead. That is the vindication for everything he did while he was alive and the sort of death he died. God vindicated him by raising him back to life and said, I approve of this. This is the way a king rules. At the end of Judges, Israel had no king because they only wanted one sort of king. They wanted a king that God was unwilling to give them. But when things got to the point where if he didn't give them a king, they would destroy themselves, and he gave them a king. And if you've read the Bible, then you know the story that they stayed alive long enough for the true king to come, but barely. See, no human king would suffice because the sin of humanity, the sin of a human king would always corrupt that sort of power, the sort of power that comes with a throne. Our sin always corrupts power. And so there's only one solution. Only God can be king. And God had a plan to make this work. He's not making this up as he goes. He had a plan right from the beginning. If humanity will only accept a human king, then God would become human. We need a human king, or we think we do. We will only accept a king that looks like us. And so what does God do? He reveals himself to us in a way that looks like us, but better. The true human. By becoming human, he would give birth to a new humanity. And this new human would not be corrupt, and he would not be corruptible. He would be perfectly obedient, perfect in love and humility. God in the flesh, in human flesh, would transform humanity itself so that we can have the capacity and desire to love God as our King. If you're hungry, then maybe someone can grab a snack for you, but I got a few more things to say. When we think about the death of Jesus in our Protestant kind of context, we rightly often think about that Jesus paid the price, right? That song we sang, Jesus paid a price we couldn't pay, right? It's right, it's biblical. But we cannot stop there. It's not just about paying a price, paying a debt we can't pay. It's not just about that. That's not good enough news. The good news of Jesus' arrival as a human, the eternal Son coming as a human, perfect, living a perfect life, perfectly obedient to the Father unto death. The good news of his death on a cross where the worst evil imaginable killed him. And the good news that he stayed dead long enough for people to know that he actually was dead. And then he came back to life. The good news of all of that, and then him sending the church into the world to bear witness to his resurrection. The good news of all of that is not just that now I, William, now the debt of my sin is paid. The good news is now I actually can become the human that God intended for me to be. That's impossible unless, the debt could have been paid because God decided to pay the debt, but he did it in a way where humanity is now transformed. All through the history of Israel, we see heroes come, rise and fall, and representatives of Israel rescuing Israel. The judges are these people. David with defeating Goliath. Heroes, representatives defeating the enemy on behalf of the whole nation. Jesus represents all of humanity, He defeats evil, he defeats death, and in the process, all of humanity now can be like him, have his nature, the transformation of humanity itself. And that is required because if we are not transformed by Jesus to love the things he loves, to desire the things he desires, if we are not transformed in that way, then we will never recognize God as the sort of king we actually need. We will never see him. We'll always be like the Israelites who just want the sort of king that all the other nations have. Until he actually transforms you from the inside and gives you a new perspective. That's what repentance is. When he transforms what you think will actually give you satisfaction in life, then you will look at the God of the Bible and say, I want that king. And until then, it will look like weakness. And too many Christians and too many pastors and religious leaders and politicians have claimed that if you truly have the power of God, then that power will look like taking over a nation, taking over a land. That now the land is Christian. Now the laws are Christian. That is not what needs to happen. What needs to happen is we all need to see that that will never happen. No human can rule with the goodness of God. So we're here to proclaim that God is king, and because he's king, there is nothing that we fear. There is nothing that we need that this world can offer us. Sure, we'll enjoy it, have fun, but take it away, I still have everything I need. So we're going to sing about that here to close. As I was listening to this song, the thing that I was thinking about is, and I don't know if you're going to be in this state of mind, but this is the state of mind I found myself in, is having heard the story, some of you have only just heard today, but this is the story of Joshua and Judges that we've been going through. God making promises, being faithful to his promises, and humans saying, but I want to do it my way. And when you have started to see that God's way is better, then singing this song is a proclamation of the way things are, the way things really are, not just the way things I feel like I want them to be, like hopeful thinking. This is a proclamation of truth, that Jesus is our King. He is our foundation. Let's sing together.